Welcome back to Journaling Through Life. Today we have our wonderful friend Paras. She is a yoga instructor from Modo Yoga in Brampton. She is also an Ayurvedic practitioner. And in previous videos, I'll put everything in the top there, we were talking about the different doshas. And now, Paras, if you could please tell us exactly what that is and how we can align or how that influences our lives, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again. In the Ayurvedic science is all about the five great elements, as I've mentioned before. And so doshas are nothing but the five great elements manifested inside of our bodies. And so we all have all the five great elements at all times functioning in our bodies. For example, the air element is anything that moves inside our body. The fire element is anything that transforms, any acidity. Thinking is because of fire element. And then the earth element is our solid structure, like our bones. The water element is basically our lymphatic system that takes the nutrition from one spot to another. So we all have all of them. However, we're born with usually one or two of the doshas more than the other one. So the word dosha means that which vitiates. So actually the doshas have these functions to do, but they can go out of balance very quickly. So we want to always keep them in balance. Air and ether create vata dosha. Fire and a little bit of water create pitta dosha. And earth and water create kapha or kapha dosha. So as we have all of the elements inside of us, therefore we have all of the doshas inside of us. But at the time of conception, depending on what the doshas of our parents were, what the temperature is, what the season is like, what their diet was like, what our ancestors' doshas were like, where we come from on planet Earth. You know, you could be coming from a desert, your ancestors could be from a desert, and other people's ancestors could be from the snowy mountains. So all of these things come together to create your particular dosha that is dominant at the time of conception. And it's like a lock. It's just like locks inside of you. You can't change that ever. However, a lot of times because we move, because we have stress, because our diet is not perfect, and it's not, you know, unless we are monks meditating on the mountains all day long or in a cave, we're all imbalanced. So that imbalance in Ayurveda is called your vikruti, or your current state of imbalance with your dosha. And so Ayurveda wants you to realize what your constitution or what your dosha or what your prakruti or actual constitution at the time of birth was, and how you can rebalance yourself towards that. Because a person who has a lot of air, for example, they have a lot of vata, they tend to be really creative and really enjoy traveling and moving around, versus the person who has a lot of kapha, which is earth and water element. They like to be, you know, solid and in one place. They love home. They love inviting people around. So if we understand these different constitutions and how they manifest in our children, how they manifest in our partners, in our parents, imagine how much better we can deal with that and just be like, you know what, that's just because you have more of this dosha and that's just your nature. So that's okay. That's okay that you can't commit to things and you're like a butterfly because you have a lot of vata, and it's okay that you're really intense and want things perfect because you have a lot of pitta. And we'll go through the doshas a little bit more, and I'll explain more.
Oh my goodness, that sounds amazing. Thank you so much. The other thing that while you were talking is I thought, you know, that compatibility factor could perhaps turn into that too, right? Like sometimes it's just not gonna work, right? Like it's just gonna be incompatible, and it's not like anybody is wrong or in the wrong. It's just how you were made. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. It's our nature. Our nature is different. That's why if we learn about our nature, then we have an understanding of it, and we're okay with the way we are, you know, and in many ways, as long as that's our nature.
Right. And I think then if we understand our own nature, we can also give that to others to say, this is your nature, and have that empathy and, not be so judgmental towards them as well.
Exactly.
That's amazing. Now, I know previously we were chatting about the air. So we had that, the anxiety into the tornado as we were discussing it. So if we can discuss one of the other elements, I'll let you choose which ones you want to start with because it's so amazing.
Sure. So maybe we'll move to the fire element, or pitta dosha. So we say fire element because the fire part of pitta is a lot more than the water part. So you can think of it as a liquid fiery substance like lava, for example. And that in our body manifests as I mentioned, acidity or any kind of transformation. Fire is very intelligent. So it creates intelligence in the body. There's a fire that lives in our stomach that helps the digestion of our food. So as the air helps the food move down, then it goes in the stomach. The water helps that kind of buffering in between the fire acidity and the food itself. And so the food starts moving there and starts digesting. And the intelligence of the fire is the reason why the body goes, okay, these are the nutrients, I'm going to separate them. And these are the malas, or the waste, I'm going to separate the two. This goes down, that goes right all over the body. So any more strong our fire is, the stronger we are. That's what we say in Ayurveda. And this main fire of the body is called Agni. So going back to the dosha of fire, so some people have that fire just naturally stronger. So how this manifests in our body is, they tend to have, like, physically, they may have more like reddish skin. So like they turn red really quickly.
Like me, I'll just put it out there. And why did I wear red today? It's like I knew.
Possibly. They may have freckles. That redness might come out as red. They may have red hair, but not necessarily all the time. They're usually average in body size. They have really intense look. So, a pitta looks at you and you go, oh my gosh, I better get my stuff together. They have that kind of intensity with the way they look at you. Pitta is usually in the middle of the two doshas. So usually they create balance in the world. Emotionally, they can be very particular. They love their stuff organized. They like to create, a project that Vata started because of creativity. Pitta will take over and finish it up, because Vatas usually forget about that project and move on to the next one, versus Pittas want to complete a task. They are great leaders, teachers, organizers. They're great politicians, doctors, very intelligent people. So usually the mind of a Pitta is very strong. Physically, the body, they think it is strong because the mind is so strong, but is not as strong. So when it goes out of balance, one of the things we see with Pitta is they burn themselves out because they work so hard, because no other person can do it better than them. So they want to do everything themselves, and then they don't realize that physically they can't handle that. So there's a burnout. Sometimes the way emotionally it goes out of balance is that beautiful particular attention. If they see that other people don't have that, they get frustrated really easily. So there's anger and frustration and fume literally coming out, is because of that kind of fire. So if we don't listen to Pitta when it's giving us signs of imbalance, for example, one of the biggest imbalances we can feel is burning sensation in the body. So if you eat your food and then all of a sudden there's like a burning sensation in your stomach, or if you have acid reflux, that's another sign of Pitta being out of balance, because that acidity, instead of going down, is now going up. So that's with the help of Vata, things are being mixed up. The skin is also a Pitta organ. So a lot of times when our pitta is imbalanced, we might see rashes or acne. We might see cold sores. Any kind of inflammation in the body is because of a pitta imbalance. If we don't listen to these first signs that usually start actually from digestion, then they become bigger problems. So we don't listen to these doshas and their messages become bigger and bigger. For example, if you have acid reflux, that's a sign from your body. Maybe yesterday you ate pizza and beer and your body hasn't digested it yet. So that is a sign your body is telling you, stop eating anything, pause, allow me to digest this first before you put anything else in. However, in the West, we're really accustomed to not being able to tolerate things like that or hear messages like that. So we go, what is happening with me? I'm going to have some Pepto-Bismol, shut up. We just want to shut these doshas that are so beautifully sending us messages. And so if that goes on and on and on, that is how disease is created. So the acid reflux can become a gastric problem or ulcers. It can create more nausea, if we have loose stools, that is another sign that the fire is too much. So if we don't listen to that and have diarrhea time after time after time and not do anything about it, then it can become a lot more irritable and a bigger problem. So any redness and inflammation, redness in the eyes, because eyes are also a pitta organ, then that's a sign that our pitta is imbalanced. Some of the things that we can do to bring balance to our pitta, if you are experiencing any of that, then it's really good to create cooling, because fire doesn't have any cooling inside of it. So cooling herbs or foods like coconut oil, parsley, dill, things like that, moderation in lifestyle, because pittas tend to be really intense. So they want to be number one in everything. They want to win every race. So just balancing that a little bit with some giving, one of the best things for pittas to practice is just giving their time to some, instead of giving to receive, just giving it, just donating something that is theirs, or donating their time, acts of service, that kind of thing is really balancing for pitta. Surrendering, just, okay, I'm not always in control and I can let go. That is one of the best things that pittas can do for themselves. Generally, foods that are sweet in a sense that the aftertaste is sweet, like rice has an aftertaste that is sweet, or honey, raw honey, and maple syrup, things like that. And foods that are bitter, they're really good for them. Foods that are cooling, that are really good for them. So sticking to things like that, when you know that, especially coming into summer, if your dosha is pitta, then you're gonna feel that heat and frustration and emotional imbalance coming out, and everybody's gonna be like, oh my gosh. If you see people be like, I'm gonna stay away from you, maybe check in with your pitta. And so,
like, chill by the pool, man, just chill.
Exactly. Water is really good for fire because it puts it out.
Right. And to that point, I was thinking too, like the air element, because air feeds water, right? So if that anxiety, if you're continuously in that anxious environment, that's just going to fuel the fire, right?
Exactly. Air feeds fire. So that's exactly the connection between vata going out of balance and then all of a sudden your fire going up. Yes.
Right. And I think, especially in the environment we're at right now, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration. So it's so wonderful, just to see how we can just balance it and bring it back to sort of a calm way so that we can use our intellect to do it. Because it feels kind of like it's opposites, right? What you're trying to achieve is you're trying to achieve this goal. But if you're continuously stuck in anger and frustration and imbalance, you're never going to reach that goal anyway.
Exactly. So that's a really good point, because the news. If you're watching the news, you're literally fueling that fire. So it's important to know what's going on in the world, but turning off the news and listening to, Mozart, or, something cooling and calming.
Maybe
Really,
whale music.
that would be amazing. I mean, if you're in my house, there's always some kind of chime or whale music or water music going on. It really affects me and cools me down and calms me down. So figure out what that is for you. Play that. The vibration, right? Vibration changes us instantly, I find.
Absolutely. It's switching that energy, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I think a lot of people can really, take this lesson and see how they can apply it to their own lives. Thank you, Paris. That's amazing. And I think the other one is then the earth element, right?
Yeah. So then it's Kapha dosha. So Kapha is earth and water, and it's almost the same amount of each. So you can think of mud. So all the qualities, I know that the gunas we talked about in the water element, in the air element as well, but the gunas or the qualities of kapha is heaviness, because if you think of mud, it's really heavy. There's no lightness to it. There's no fire in there, so it's very cold. So you can think of also kapha people and vata people would be more, their tendency would be to be cold, versus a pitta is always hot. It's like no matter what the temperature is, they want the air come in. They want the windows open. That's one of the things you can think of to see what dosha is more dominant in you. And then it's heavy, it's dense, it's slow. You can think of also mucus in the body. So the lungs are the home of kapha dosha. So if there's a lot of mucus coming out, that's a lot of kapha in the body. So that's one sign of, and we see this a lot in springtime, because spring is also kapha season. So there's a lot of humidity, there's a lot of water in the air, and there is heaviness. You might find early spring, it's hard to move. It's hard to get motivated. It's that slowness of kapha settles inside of us. So people who have a lot of this dosha naturally at the time of conception, and it's in their constitution, they tend to be bigger boned. So like their bones are bigger, their chest is bigger, like a good voice of an opera singer. Usually singers have a lot of this dosha. And because they have a really big chest area, they have a really big heart. So they're the kindest of all the doshas. They're very family oriented. They're very loyal. They're very stable. So we always say a vata person needs a kapha friend to calm them down and bring them down to earth, literally. So yeah, a kapha friend would be really good with vata. And so usually kapha is the constitution that has the least amount of problems. They're usually really chill. They're really calm, stable. They're that friend that you always go to if you have any problems. You probably can think of a person in your life that has these qualities. And so when they get out of balance, and if they get out of balance, which is very rare, they can become very intense in a different format than a pitta, which means they're very headstrong. So if they have made up their mind and they don't want to do something, they become like a heavy rock, like a mountain. You cannot move a kapha. And I know this because my husband's a kapha. So for the most part, he's so loving and so kind and generous and all of these things. But then when he doesn't want to do something, I know I can't move a mountain. So I just let it be until he decides that he wants to do that. So these are, if you know that, then you don't try to fight a mountain and move it. And so that can also create, if they're not in a good space, then that can create depression. So if they're the ones that would stay at home, and usually a kapha doesn't really want to move and do things because they're happy at home, but they're very jolly. They're very joyful. They're very happy. If they're not happy, then you know that it's moving more towards that darkness of depression. And so it's good now that Vata friend can come in and be like, let's go. I have a new restaurant I want to show you, or let's go for a hike. Movement is the best thing that Kapha can do for itself. And so if we don't listen to, the excess energy of Kapha, which comes in a form of heaviness, dullness, lethargy, maybe heavy excess mucus, if you look at your tongue in the mirror in the morning and there's a thick white coating on it, then you know that things are not circulating. The organ or the system of the body that is really connected to Kapha is the lymphatic system. Lymphatic system does not have an organ to move it. So if we don't move, it just gets stuck. And so when the liquids of the body are not moving, we become heavy. We become dull. We can't think straight. There's like a fogginess in the mind. These are some of the things that could happen to Kapha. And then that feeling of stubbornness comes, sometimes they can become emotionally overeating creatures, because it's like, oh, let's just, that couch potato feeling can happen. And if any of these happen, then we need to help our Kapha friend or our Kapha constitution inside of us, but bringing a little bit of fire, So for Kaphas, it's actually really good to have stimulating experiences and stimulating food. Like spicy food, only Kaphas can handle that, because for Vatas, it's too fiery, it's too aggravating for their mind. And for Pittas, it just creates them very furious. It creates that kind of anger and frustration. But Kaphas can handle that. Another thing that they can handle is coffee, So like, not all day long, but usually coffee and caffeine and stimulants like that doesn't affect Kapha people as much as it affects Pitta and Vata. Foods that are a bit warming and a bit bitter and pungent and astringent in nature are really good for Kapha. So that's like all the leafy greens cooked in ginger and turmeric, all the spices, coriander, all of that is really good for Kapha constitution. But eating less heavy foods. So like anything that you put on your plate and it goes, like potatoes or mashed potatoes or like lasagna or pasta, things like that are not really Kapha friend. Even dairy is really heavy for Kapha. So lighter foods are really brilliant for them. And you know what? I just want to mention this as well, that one of the greatest ways we can control our mood and our mind is the food, because food really affects us. So just watch what you eat today and how you feel the next day. I have observed in myself, if I eat a lot of Kapha excess food, which is like pasta and lots of cheese on it and dairy and things like that, then the next day I see the slowness and the lethargy and the dullness in myself. Versus if I eat something lighter, then I feel lighter. So it goes hand in hand.
I just love that. And that's a really good thing where you can do a food journal, right? You can write down what you ate and then just correspond all the emotions and how you feel and how you were able to handle maybe, stressful situations or good situations. I love that. That is so important. Yes. And I think I married one too. That's so funny that you said that. I'm like, yep. And when they are not feeling great, you can see, here comes the pasta, here comes the pizza. It's like, it's those, comfort foods that's not really helping. So I think that's an important thing that you said too, right? Like maybe do the opposite. If you're feeling kind of depressed and sad and heavy with emotions, eat something light, right?
Exactly. Or go for a walk. So that lightness can come in our subtle body as well by going for a jog or a walk or riding our bike, So in all areas of our life, creating lightness.
Movement, right. And I think an important thing too is, I know the previous time we were talking about children and anxiety, and I think it's important for us to know what our children's consistency is as well. One kid might just want to do this all the time and the other kid doesn't, right? Like
Yes,
just
and
understanding the dynamic.
the science says like increases like opposites decrease. So if you know that your child naturally is a kapha child, for example, which I have a kapha child, and they tend to learn slower, but they will never forget, because the kapha, it's the white matter of the brain is kapha. So that sticks to them like that. They never forget anything. So it's okay if your children are not learning things like that. So what if they learn it a little bit slower and they need more time to digest it? Is it because of their constitution? And then they will never forget it, versus a vata child might learn things like that, forget it like that, and a pitta child will learn quick and will remain keep it in their brain because of the intelligence factor. But so all of the children can be intelligent, strong, but it's just in different ways. And if we know that, then as parents, we can also help them. So if my kapha child is feeling a bit lethargic today, is not moving, wants to sit on the couch and play video games, what can I do as a parent? Maybe I'll feed them, leafy greens or a smoothie or something like that, so that they can find stimulation. Maybe I'll drag them to a bike ride, or the park, I'll tell them to move around or run around the house. Whatever it is that you can do to create that movement to balance. So you want the opposites always to balance it out.
To balance it out. I just love that. Now, you were saying that the lymphic system, that's the water, right? Like the water goes through everything. So is an element by itself, or is it just sort of connected to all the other elements?
No, all the elements are all connected.
Right.
But different elements inside the body have different functions. Right. So fire is acidity. Water is the lymphatic system, where it takes the nutrients from one place to another. Air is the movement in the body. So the air we breathing and the exhalation and the movement of our food, all of that. So they're constantly, these elements or doshas are working together to create balance inside our bodies. How amazing is that? We don't tell them, hey, air, you now need to move my food down my throat. We don't do that. They're so intelligent. They're beautifully doing the functions that nature has organized for them to do. It's only when we interrupt the functions that there's problems. By not sleeping at night because I wanted to watch this movie or play video games or eat pizza at midnight, or by eating the wrong foods and creating interruption, by not moving enough and creating interruptions, by emotionally not being calm. And but one of the greatest ways that you can control how you balance these doshas is the way you eat. Not only what you eat, but the way you eat. So if you're sitting and having a business meeting and eating really spicy food, and then your boss is yelling at you and there's a really intense conversation going on, you can be sure that food does not get digested. The same way as if you're sitting with your family, lighting up a candle, putting flowers, all the sense organs. Again, coming back to the sense organs and creating a beautiful area, listening to really nice, calm music while you eat, then the sensations, the doshas in the body go, okay, this is time to eat, and we're not at war. So we can actually digest our food. We're not in the car speaking on the phone on a meeting, trying to eat a sandwich and drive at the same time. Right. So how we eat is very, very important for the state of our dosha, the health of our physical body and our mental body.
I just love that. And it's so true. Do not be in competition. Just be, you are your body, you are your mind, you are everything, find that balance. Thank you for explaining that, Paras. Now, I have another question for you. If you have a child, or, you are a person that is overly sensitive to, stimuli, sort of like empaths, right? That can get energies from elsewhere, those type of things. How can you sort of tell us what doshas do you think would they have? Because I know in other, thoughts of thinking in psychology, water is sort of the emotion. That's usually what they do with emotions, right? So it's water signs, the floodgates just open up with the littlest amounts of things. Is there a dosha that, we could talk about in that sense?
Yes, absolutely. I think I think that can be any dosha really, but from the lens of Ayurveda, vatas, which is the air and ether element, tend to be the most sensitive because they're very usually they don't have that solid grounding foundation that a kapha would have. You're right, water element is very sensitive too. It takes on everything, it feels everything. As I said, kaphas have a very big heart, so they can literally be that empath that feels everything. However, usually they have that solid energy of earth inside of them to help them digest it. Versus a vata child, they're very sensitive. They're your hypersensitive child, but then they don't know what to do with that experience. So I would be more careful with my vatas because they tend to be very artistic. They tend to be musicians or painters or actresses or whatever it is that is going on in their life. They might show any signs of art, and the problem with them is that because they don't have that solid grounding, if one person tells them something that they don't like to hear, or if there's a mean child in their school or something like that, vatas go and hide. They don't come and fight like pittas, and they don't try to make peace. They'll go disappear like a butterfly. That's why we have to keep our eyes more, I would say, on the vatas. But I mean, all children act differently in different situations.
Right. And I think you made a very good point. It's, all kids have that, and we'll manage the classrooms accordingly. And your own kid, know your own kid. And when I said hypersensitivity, I didn't mean that as a bad term either, because I think we can help them ground. We can teach them how to ground, to maybe take some of that, more solid energy via, like maybe writing, or actually moving them into their art or whatever their music is, because the physical thing of sitting down and doing something might work. Would you agree with that?
Exactly. So then if you know that just doesn't come naturally to your child, how can you create that balance, create a safe space for them where they can sit, they can focus, they can do one job at a time, do your art, I'll support you. Love is the only language that all of us understand, but especially vata, only love. Anything else, I'll run away.
I think that is the greatest takeaway. Oh, thank you, Paris. That is very insightful. That is very insightful. Thank you. Now, I know previously we also mentioned, the hands. You were talking about the hands and the energy of the hands. If you can just give us a practical thing of maybe how we can help ourselves, like in this time when we're at home. Is there healthy energy we can, use?
Yes, absolutely. So our hands, and everybody's hands, they have healing qualities. So our hands are magnetic, and you can just see this by just bringing your hands a little closer and closer until you feel that. Do you feel that resistance? That's prana. Prana is our life force, the life force that is in abundance around of us. It's like how much of it we have depends on the practices that we practice every day. That's why we practice yoga. People think yoga is for stretching, but no, you're actually creating more prana inside of you, which is the life force, which is the energy that we get from the sun. You put a plant beside the window and they lean towards the sun because they get their prana from the life force of the sun. In the same way, us humans get our prana from different sources, like our food, our water, the sun, all of that. And so any more prana we have, the more aware we are, the more awareness we have. the more clarity we have in our mind. So with our hands are one of the best tools that we have been given that carry that prana and can move that prana. So you can just put your hands together. This is a very simple one, and rub it together because you're creating more prana.
Sort of like
And
friction, right?
you're creating more friction, exactly. And then now try to feel that magnetic pull. It's usually more. Yeah. And then do it again. One of the best things you can do for your nerves is just put the hands on the eyes. Let that energy that you've created, that prana that you've created, go in through the eyes, because the eyes are, an open organ that can take things in. And then coming back, you can do that again. Another one that I really like is putting one hand on the heart and one hand on the lower belly, because the lower belly is the home of vata, and then vata is very sensitive. So the heart, the connection of the lower belly and the heart, and usually we end our practice of yoga like this. It's like we come into shavasana and it's like, okay, let's reconnect inside and see what's happening. And so that heaviness, that calm energy that we can create. So there's a lot of things that we can do with our hands, but number one is believe that your hands actually are tools of healing. My daughter actually, I have never told her this, but she told me the other day, we were trying to put some dust on our chickens because we have backyard chickens, and that they had some lice, so we were putting some dust on them. And then she was like, it's okay, mommy, let me put my hands on their head and they calm down, and then you can put it on. And it was actually working. And then I said, where did you even see that from? Oh, in yoga class they taught us that our hands can heal. It's like, oh my God. So if you teach them that from the beginning, when you're upset or you're not feeling well, why don't you just rub your hands together and put your hands on your eyes, and they will heal you? Or put your hand on your forehead and it will heal you. And children will take on to that.
You know what? I love the idea that it's part of you. It's not some external thing that you always have to go find, right? It's already there. You just need to know how to use it. I love that. And they'll remember that forever. It's awesome that you have backyard chickens, by the way. I really wish I could have backyard chickens.
They're awesome.
Oh, and while I was doing that, I was thinking, it's like a loop. It's like creating like loops all over, right? It really felt that way, like completing some circles and creating that loop energy, which does.
And I mean, we're not talking everything scientific. For me, I usually bring the science behind the things that I teach my students. And this is no longer things that we can just feel. Science is slowly catching up. So if you want to do your research and find out why there's magnetic pull on our hands and how it actually creates these balances and imbalances, then it's definitely, the information is out there now.
Absolutely. And you're right. And it's amazing. We're all just a part of it, right? Absolutely. A little bit of the yin and the yang. I learned that the other day too, right? Science and intuition. I love that. I love that. Now, a final one just for our feet, because I know that, us as moms, we stand on our feet quite a bit. And there's, our feet is sort of that grounding that we go into the earth and we get, our nourishment. And like you were saying, like that heaviness, the groundedness. Is there anything we can do for our feet in this time to help us sort of stand?
Yes, absolutely. So feet, so the energy enters through the crown of the head and it goes out of the feet. So that's why in yoga, for example, if you've ever done yoga and you're in shavasana, we all point our feet towards the back of the room so that the energy goes out that way. So what that means is also the toxins can be pulled out of the feet. So one of the things, the greatest things and simplest things you can do is maybe fill up your tub or a bucket with hot water and a little bit of, Epsom salt. And so that salt will pull all the toxins out of the body. You can even put a little bit of charcoal in there if you have it and if it's accessible, things like that. Anything that has the pulling quality, any herb that has a pulling quality. Oil also has a pulling quality. So maybe just putting a little bit of, putting your feet in, oil is harder because then you need a lot of it, but maybe a little bit of sesame oil, a little bit of warm, olive oil, things like that, and just putting your feet in it, it pulls out all the toxins out of the feet. And not so that you're not only helping your feet, but you're literally helping the whole system.
Whole system, just draining it out. It's like like my daughter, she was saying, Mom, we should just lay on the grass because it'll help. So even just standing on the grass, right, like the cooling part of it. Right?
Yes, the earth.
The earth.
Anytime I don't know what to do, I'm like, let's go outside, let's sit on the earth, let's go for a walk, let's go bare feet, connect to nature.
Absolutely. Oh, that's amazing. Well, Paris, thank you so much. You have such a wealth of information. Thank you. Thank you. Now, if you wanted to quickly say where people can reach you, it doesn't have to be quick. I don't know why I always say that, but you can say where people can reach you, what you're doing now, because you're not open yet. So what we can help, and how we can support your business.
Apparently I can open my Ayurvedic one-on-ones next week. But if anyone wants to do a Zoom call and go over any issues quickly with their children or themselves, or if you just want to know what your constitution is, you're doubtful of which one is your constitution, we can definitely do a session on Zoom. So they can email me or go on the website and just look at what different things are offered. I really appreciate that, and I hope that I can help you with the Ayurvedic science.
That's awesome. Thank you. And as always, we'll put all the links in the description below. Paris, thank you so much.